Hello and very good evening to all of you from Jagsonpal Pharmaceuticals Limited, makers of Metadeck and Cola2. On behalf of Jagsonpal, I am Dr. Vipin Tyagi, welcoming you all to the webinar today on Elizrov in Management of Bone Gaps, a boon for the orthopod and patient, organized by North Zone Orthopedic Association. We are thankful to North Zone Orthopedic Association for providing us the opportunity to associate with them in this webinar. Special thanks to today's patron, Dr. Sanjeev Gupta, President, North Zone Orthopedic Association, and Professor and Head, Postgraduate Department of Orthopedic, Government Medical College, Jammu. Thank you, sir, for your blessings. Thank you, Dr. Harpal Singh Sahli, Professor and Unit Head, Department of Orthopedics at Dayanand Medical College, Ludhiana. Secretary, North Zone Orthopedic Association and coordinator for the series on Elizrov, the Versatile Magical Machine. Dr. Harpal has contributed in various book chapters and conferences. We are thankful to Dr. Harpal sir for convening this webinar. I will now request Dr. Harpal Singh sir to kindly initiate the session.
At the outset, I'd like to welcome our President, Dr. Sanjeev Gupta, our Chairman, Dr. Altaf Kavoosa, our moderator for the today, Professor P.N. Gupta, all my colleagues, faculty members, and all the attendees. And I thank Jagsonpal Pharma for having given us a platform to organize this. I'll request our worthy President, Dr. Sanjeev Gupta, to welcome everyone and declare this meeting open.
Good evening, everyone. Without taking much time, I would like to start the webinar, and I must thank all the participants and the delegates. Especially, I would like to thank Dr. Harpal, who is the coordinator of this webinar. It was a dream come true for me because we wanted to start such activities for North Zone. And Dr. Harpal has started this. So without wasting much time, we'll start with the program.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. I'll request Dr. Vipin Tyagi to introduce all the panelists to the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Harpal sir. Now, before moving ahead for scientific session, I would like to briefly introduce dignitaries present with us today. We thank esteemed Chairperson, Dr. Altaf Ahmed Kavoosa, Professor, Department of Orthopedics, Government Medical College, Srinagar, for sparing your valuable time. Dr. Altaf has nearly 56 publications, 40 conference papers, and several awards to his credit. Moderator for today's webinar, Dr. P.N. Gupta, Professor, Department of Orthopedics, GMCH, Chandigarh. In the panel, we have Dr. Anupam Mahajan, Professor and Unit Head, Ortho Dayanand Medical College, Ludhiana, and Treasurer, NZOA. Dr. Siddharth Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of Orthopedics, PGI MER. He has a special interest in foot and ankle surgery, complex deformity correction. Dr. Suresh Kumar Bhola, Polio and Deformity Correction Center, Kurukshetra. Dr. Tarandeep Singh, MS Ortho, Fellow Reconstructive and Elizrov Surgery, Bones and Balance Clinic, Amritsar. Thank you all for sparing your valuable time to share the knowledge. Welcome to all attendees present with us today. We hope that you all enjoy the session today. Please note this webinar is brought to you as knowledge sharing initiative by Jagsonpal Medical Services, and this session is streaming on Facebook Live. The recording will remain on Jagsonpal's YouTube channel for reference and knowledge sharing. We request all attendees to please post your queries by text in the Q&A box, which will be answered at the end. Due to the time constraint, please share your questions during the webinar itself as text. I will now request Dr. Harpal Singh Sahli sir to kindly take over, sir.
All right, so let's start with it. We have Professor Altaf Ahmed Kavoosa, who is the master magician with the magical machine. I'll request him to give an introductory talk to introduce this subject to all the attendees. Dr. Altaf Kavoosa, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Harpal, sir, for your nice words. With the permission of President and the organizers, I'll be starting my presentation with this Elizrov. I'm trying to share the screen. So is my screen available to everybody? Hello?
Yes, sir, it's available.
Okay. So we start here. I'm starting the presentation. So tonight's topic has been Elizarov, the versatile magical machine. So this is the machine and this is the magic. Actually, it is the law of tension, stress effect, the principles of distraction, osteogenesis that brings about all this magic out of this Elizarov technique. So you simply have these principles can be utilized for limb lengthening, or you could correct the deformities, or you could fill in the bone gaps. Depending upon your needs, the principles could be used to correct the deformities, limb lengthenings, or treating non-unions. So these are the common applications like limb lengthening, non-unions, large bone defects, or intra-articular fractures. Then advanced applications would be complex deformities, submassive lengthenings, orthodiastasis, Elizarov hip reconstruction, and then some things that had not been done before. So in our past 23 years experience with Elizarov technique, we came out with certain modifications or certain innovations in different areas of orthopedics. Among them have been Monteja fracture dislocation, the neglected ones, and the Kienbock's disease. I'll be discussing about them briefly. So our experience in last 23 years of about 130 procedures of Elizarov technique, and among them around 390 patients with complex situations. What I'm trying to do is that I'll take some representative cases from each area of the skeleton, starting from the upper limb. So you could see commonly that you have, here we had a girl with 6 centimeter shortening of the humerus. Since upper limb is considered equally important in Elizarov technique, that's why I started with this presentation from the humerus only. So basically a defect in the humerus due to the post-osteomyelitic arrest, and then a simple two-ring construct, corticotomy distal to the deltoid tuberosity, then distraction. We equalize the length. So what was to begin with is now an equal limb length on both sides. Both humeri are equal. So similarly, this is not an uncommon condition. You have distal fascial arrest of the radius, giving this deformity. And to reconstruct distal corticotomy and a drop pin to have stability. An excellent regenerate that has developed due to distraction osteogenesis. And finally, this is the new reconstruction, and you have corrected the distal radial ulnar discrepancy to compare it with what it was to begin with, hugely short distal radius. So similarly, you might have a similar case, but if you are not comfortable with the ring construct, so you could use a distractor simply, and it might give an equal and wonderful regenerate. And finally, this is the regenerated one. Here, the distal fasces of ulna is still open, so we have over-lengthened, so that once it's equalized, the discrepancy is equalized, that time we would fascia this distal ulna. Then going towards the hand. So this girl came up with short little finger, the reason being short metacarpal. Again, a small distractor used, a nice regenerate, and this is the result. Her little finger is lengthened and both are equal now. It's cosmetically an excellent result. Considering the lower limb, your application in the femur, again, shortenings are very common. But in order to shorten the period of fixation, what you do a lengthening of a nail nowadays, so that once you have gained the length, so you take out the fixator, lock the nail, and this is how it is. It has dramatically reduced the external fixation time. And at the same time, once the ring is for lesser time and you have a proximal corticotomy, you have a nice maintenance of the knee range of motion. Then one of the important factors is this intra-articular fractures. A lot of comminution in plateau fractures, so it gives really difficult time with plates. a lot of complications associated with plates, and especially these limbs having soft tissue, bad soft tissues around. So this becomes a handy technique in that. Actual combination is revealed by the CT scan. This is used where you finally plan your olives and you come to understand where you need to lift the fragments and do ligamentotaxis and then plan olive oils accordingly. So you see you have olives counteracting olives here, and then this olive gives a buttressing effect on the lateral condyle. Then you sometimes use a hybrid technique. If you have a larger fragment, you can use screws at the same time to make it a hybrid fixation. This is after removal of the external fixator. You have nice union, and the beauty of this is that you have an excellent range of motion after removal of external fixator. Then applications on the tibia. I chose this case because I wanted to show bifocal lengthening. So this was a case basically in childhood, Huntington procedure was done, but it has united nicely, but ended up with a varus and a shortening tibia with around 7 centimeters of shortening. This is the scanogram. Then we planned 2-level corticotomies, one here and another here. This was to correct the deformities simultaneously. And you have a lovely regenerate from the proximal side as well as the distal side. At the same time, simultaneously, you have been able to correct the deformities. This is a beautiful regenerate at both sides. This is ring in place. And finally, you have had an equalized limb length on either side. Again, an interesting case. So this is post-STR fascial arrest distal tibia, so which led to a 6 centimeter shortening. You can visualize that the fibula has overgrown, but the tibia has had an arrest. So again, it's wonderful to do a lengthening over nail. So this shortens the period of external fixation. You see a lovely regenerate. And see what the versatility is, that what we have used it here is, you can find that there's this, you have this, is the screen, do you have any disturbances in the screen? Okay, so you have a device where derotation device. So that derotation device is, you are able to correct the intorsion at the same time. External fixation time is reduced by half. This is the final correction. Then in the foot at the ankle, you have application in clubfoot. So this is reserved, the Ilizarov technique is reserved for severe cases. All the angles are disturbed, but the joints are congruent. This is the construct, and here we have used this derotation bar also, so that this derotates the fixed supination. You go on monitoring them with the X-ray, so that you find the things are going in the right way. This is after removal of the POP casts, because once we remove the fixator, we put them temporarily on casts, and after removal of the cast, the foot is corrected. Then we maintain in the foot orthosis. This is how the child would walk before. And this is after the correction. And now this is interesting, that you have this deformity in a girl who came specifically for this cosmesis. Actual reason is short fourth metatarsal on both sides. So we use a small distractor, UMAX distractor, for after corticotomy to distract this. This is after distraction. And this is on an application on the right side. So this is what she was to begin with. And this is the cosmetic wonderful result. You have lengthened both metatarsi and it's cosmetically looking pretty good. There's some extraordinary applications, like in complex deformities. Like this guy, 33 years old with childhood history of growth arrest, 9 centimeters of shortening, severe varus, and he has an internal rotation of around 90 degrees. Some planning. So you find out the coras, then the mechanical axis is grossly deviated. Then after proximal corticotomy, kindly appreciate that you have lateral projection on the proximal end, while as you have AP projection distally. Similarly here, AP proximally and lateral distally means the limb is 90-degree rotated. So once the correction was done, this is the wedge correction, the internal rotation is manifest. So at this juncture, we use the derotation assembly to derotate it. That can be appreciated by the twisted region right here. And this is what he was to begin with. And this is the wonderful correction. And looking from behind, you could see the alignment, what was to begin with, and what it is now. Is absolutely fine. And this is how he would walk like. And this is how he works now. Another interesting thing, now this is a 9-year-old girl with bow deformities. This is a very complex deformity because the problem is at multiple levels, you have multiple cora. So a lot of planning to take care of. So you plan different osteotomies at different levels. So we started doing it individually, first right, then left proximal tibia, then femurs. And then at the end of correction, we fasciodized so that to prevent recurrences. And this is what she was to begin with. And this is the final correction. A very happy child. Now, a very important aspect is in these hips, damaged hips that have been badly damaged due to infection, sepsis. This is the concept of Ilizarov hip reconstruction. You do one osteotomy proximally to give the pelvic support, and then you have a varicizing, lengthening osteotomy. So this lengthens, this equalizes, and puts the a different mechanical axis, and that happens once you have seen. So after consolidation, also the axis is restored. An example of such a girl, post-septically with 5 centimeters shortening, couldn't do a total hip at this age, at the age of 16 years. So we have better plan for a pelvic support osteotomy. This is the first osteotomy, the level at the ischial tuberosity. Then this is the second varicizing osteotomy that realigns and that lengthens the limb also. So this is function also, and this is the new axis. And if you look at the gait to begin with, the short limb with a lurch, and this is after correction. And what's important is biomechanically, if you see the Trendelenburg, yeah, this Trendelenburg is somewhat restored. Then dealing with difficult contractures, like this guy, he had a road traffic accident, a child. The skin is so fragile. The plastic surgeons, they did some kind of a grafting, but left with 120 degrees, 110 degrees of flexion contracture. There was not even a jog of movement, and the skin is so fragile. Any scalpel on that would even create more disaster. So this is how the child was miserable with his gait. So we planned orthodiastasis, distraction across the joint. This is during distraction, and you would love to see this gait. He's not able only to walk, but as the child would like, he is able to run also. Initially, I thought that I should be getting a straighter limb. I thought that maybe I may not be able to have his limb flexed again. But this was a bonus to get some kind of a flexion also. Then during these years, we have been able to use the Ilizarov technique in many other conditions. Like you see, this is skin box disease. We thought that, this is the joint discrepancy between radius and ulna. So as usually, what used to be done previously, ulnar lengthening used to be done in these cases. But because of the problems of union, etc., it was abandoned. But we thought, why not to distract it and lengthen by distraction osteogenesis? That perhaps might induce an increase in the local vascularity as well, in addition to leveling the distal radioulnar joint. So we did ulnar lengthening. This is second year post-op, and the joint is leveled. You can see the difference between the density of the previous lunate and the lunate later. But then soon we shifted to, this is the point contact and now a uniform contact of the lunate. We soon shifted that this could be easily done with a unipollinar distractor. So this is the pre-op, the post-op, and another patient, this is pre-op, and this is at 16 years of follow-up. And then neglected montage of fracture dislocation. This was 6 months old. So we thought that we need to do something different to get this back. So I planned it in this way that if we hyperangulate in 2 planes, the intraosseous membrane is going to bring this radial head back. So we did a proximal osteotomy, then gradually distracted. This is the wedge creation with distraction osteogenesis, and our radial head is back in position. This is to show its function. There is no compromise. There is no compromise in the motion of the elbow, especially the supination and pronation. Thank you very much for patient hearing. I think it must maybe have been able to put across some words.
So thanks, Dr. Kavusa, for the wonderful talk. Can we have Dr. P.N. Gupta to moderate the case discussions on gap non-unions?
So this is a case by Dr. Altaf. This is a 20 years old boy with post-osteomyelitis defect, and the combined defect and the shortening and the non-union and the defect was total of 6 centimeters. So it's a question to Dr. Harpal. So what do you think you will do here, and what are the options available?
First of all, I would like to assess this patient with the biochemical markers. And you said 6 centimeters of shortening.
Yeah,
right?
There's in the slide. The total shortening and gap combined is 6 centimeters. 6
centimeters. And we have a subluxation of the proximal tibiofibular joint.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So for me, it will be a case of distal corticotomy in the tibia. Of course, a Ilizarov application, I would go with the Ilizarov for this. A distal corticotomy and freshen up the proximal edges.
Okay.
In the first stage, I would, depends on the condition that I want to create a compression or docking primarily, or maybe after bone transport, I like to dock. And then if required, maybe help of a bone graft.
Okay, so you want to dock there in the proximal area first acutely?
Depends if the fibula allows me to proximally, primarily only if the fibula allows me to do the docking in primary stage. If not, then I like to do it gradually over a bone transport and then dock it.
Would you like to osteotomize the fibula?
Maybe this is possible. That's the other option. Then we take
that will allow you docking.
Yeah, that will allow me docking. That's a fair thing to do. But as of now, it seems that this child has been walking on fibula and is pretty thick.
Yeah, it's
So
quite high.
I'm not sure. Actually, I don't do so much of pediatric work, so I'm not sure if osteotomizing this fibula will hamper my treatment in any way. But that would be my plan.
So fine. So you were planning for if it is possible to do a acute docking, then you will consider acute docking and a lengthening with a distal corticotomy.
Yeah.
And fine. And if it is not, then you will consider a bone transport.
Yeah. Now looking at Dr. PN, I think we'll have to do a osteotomy of the fibula, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to correct this deformity.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, you're right. I missed on that point. The osteotomy of the fibula is necessary, you know.
So I would wish to add that the osteotomy for the fibula should be oblique. If it is a transverse, then it will not allow. It will be difficult to sort of make the fibula override. So it should be oblique osteotomy.
Yeah.
So I think you will agree to that. So Dr. Dr. Taran, would you like to do the same, or would you like to do anything different?
One other thing you can do is like you can do the other side fibula transfer, vascular fibula.
Okay,
because here
the total shortening is 6 centimeters, and
you can plan lengthening later stage, two-stage procedure. Okay. First you get the union with the fibula, vascular fibula.
Okay.
And along with fibular osteotomy here.
So how do you plan to bring the fibula down in the second stage?
No, I am not planning to fibula down second stage. We will lengthen this after union. If you got a union
you
here,
want to lengthen only the tibia.
Yeah.
That will automatically bring the fibula down.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Agreed. So we have two options here. One is corticotomy, osteotomy of the fibula, oblique osteotomy of the fibula.
Yeah.
With acute docking if possible, otherwise a bone transport. And if acute docking is possible, then we have a lengthening in the distal tibia with the corticotomy. And other option is a vascularized fibula with a later stage lengthening. So let's see what was done. So this was done by Dr. Altaf. So Dr. Altaf, you freshened the ends and and shoved the fibula, the sharp end of the distal fragment into the cancellous proximal area of the tibia, and simultaneously did a osteotomy of the fibula. And did a distal corticotomy and lengthened. So Dr. Altaf, I wish to ask, did you take the fixator across to the ankle, since the distal fragment is very small?
Yeah. Like you see, am I audible?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. So I took it across because the distal fragment is small. So any movements around the foot would create some disturbances at the corticotomy site. So I have gone across and put in a ring, half ring at the ankle, at the calcaneus level.
So fine. So that means the message is that if you have a very short fragment, you have to go across to the joint to increase the stability of the fixator.
And if you look at this Sean's pin, which I have used posteriorly, this is very handy. Actually, this prevents any going into equinus, because this is going to be a lengthening procedure.
This is the one you are talking?
Yeah.
Agree.
Because once you are going to go ahead with lengthening, then TA will contract. This will prevent any kind of this equinus formation at the ankle.
So to sum it up, you need to put in a fixation device in the calcaneum to prevent equinus, and the best suited is a posterior calcaneal pin.
Because if we use a transverse wires only, then the whole assembly is going to rotate around that. Since equinus will be in that plane, it will go on rotating it. And one important thing was that why I prefer that if you look at the anatomy of this distal fragment, it was tapered, so I used the tapered end to make it as a peg and hold docking. So this gives this gives an inherent stability as well as the more chances of union because of surface area.
Agreed, sir. So that will give you stability, because if you compress these two fragments, then you don't require an additional fixation. Normally you would require a near far cortex, but if you compress, then it will fine.
Yeah.
So we have already answered that the stability of the construct was by the proximal fragment by compression. So they will act like a single
unit
fragment, single unit here.
And the lengthening is proceeding at the middle and the distal one.
Yes, and the distal fragment stability is by spanning the fixator across to the ankle. And eventually the limb length was equalized and the region rate was consolidating, and this is at the union. So what are the key learning points here? That bone gap can be covered by a distraction osteogenesis, and it can be sort of a up to 25 centimeters has been described. Compression may obviate the necessity for bone grafting. Of course, you have to freshen the ends. Distal corticotomy is successful and it doesn't lead to a failure. Distal corticotomy in the tibia is successful in regenerate, and regenerate should be monitored for a deformity. Dr. Altaf, you wish to add a point or two?
Yeah. If we go to the last slide, sir. Yeah. Like you see, you have two issues. Once you have a proximal corticotomy, the proximal fragment tends to go into procurvatum, and same problem has happened here. Because the distal fragment is small, so preferably if in addition to this wires, one could add a half pin that would be perpendicular, and this would prevent.
So this would be somewhere here in the distal fragment.
Yeah. So a half pin, a chance pin or a half pin would prevent this procurvatum at the distal.
So,
that would have given you a better result.
Yeah, I fully agree with you that if you add an additional chance pin or a half pin, as we call it,
in a different plane,
that will give, that is anterior to posterior.
Yeah.
And that will actually increase the stability of the construct, and whatever little procurvatum is there,
it would not have happened.
Prevented. Agreed, sir. So this is a case by Dr. Tarandeep. So this was a person with who was very heavy, 200 kgs, wrestler. He had a compound fractured tibia, closed femur right-sided, that was ipsilateral, and tibia was treated with external fixator, femur was done with open nailing. Now the issue was with the discharging sinus of the femur. He was unable to bear weight, deformity in the tibia but united, stiff ankle and ankle equinus, stiff knee and ankle equinus. So this is the pre-operative picture, and there you can see multiple discharging sinuses. Remember, this was done with the open nailing. And 9 months after the surgery, the operating surgeon did dynamize, but eventually this did not heal and ended up in an infected non-union. So what are the treatment options? This is a question to Dr. Siddharth.
Okay, so this is a really tough case, and the problems at hand, as I understand, are: number one, he has an infected non-union of the femur. Number two, he has a tibial deformity. Number three, and the one which is maybe a real game changer, is that he is very, very obese. So, sir, my preference in this case would be to, of course, take out the infected nail, do a thorough debridement, and I would want to put in antibiotic-coated nail that would take care of the infection. And once the infection settles down, convert this into a definitive fixation.
So, Dr. Siddharth, I wish to add that once you take out this material, this is all dead bone, it appears. And maybe you might have to debride a little bit of the ends also. So what are you going to do with the dead space there? Would you like to put in some sort of filler there, or would you like to consider that this muscle will automatically take care of the dead space. Or
So, sir, I would, yes.
Would you like to do a shortening there?
So, sir, it looks as if this case would have at least 4 or 5 centimeters of shortening. Now, I would assess this on table. If I were able to get a primary intraoperative docking, I would prefer that, let it unite, and at a second stage, worry about the limb length discrepancy, address that later. If I could not get an intraoperative docking, I would then consider putting in the same stage a cement spacer.
Okay. So, Dr. Bhola, would you like to differ a little, or would you like to go with the same? Dr. Bhola, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Would you differ a little, or would you like to consider the same?
I'll consider the same, sir, as has been told by Dr. Siddharth.
Okay, fine. So what we have is we first need to take care of the infection, and then simultaneously we need to take care of the union. So first is remove all the infected material, including the bone, dead bone, and this nail. Put in an antibiotic nail and put in a cement spacer, or else consider a acute shortening so that the dead space is taken care of. So what was done was same, and the Dr. Tarandeep chose a Ilizarov fixator. Now this is the immediate post-op. My question to Dr. Tarandeep is that since the person is very obese with a very bulky thigh, did you face any issues with the fixator, and because did you face issues with the fixatory impingement in such a bulky thigh, and how did you take care of that?
Okay. So the available size for the ring size available in Elizarov Conventry is 240, I think. The maximum size available.
Yeah, maximum size available is 240. Agreed. Sir.
Yeah. This is 240 size ring, and this is the maximum area up I can apply this with the skin, little bit of skin impingement. I feel there because the thigh size is very big. The girth of thigh is very, very big. So we managed with the help of cardboard and the crepe bandage inside, but little bit impingement is there because we have to apply it and we have to take care of the corticotomy. Also, we need bone area to do a corticotomy. And the second thing I feel in trouble is the pin size. I have put 220 pin size inside. Yeah. And in the proximal area, you have seen my pins are not bicortical. These are
because of the short pin.
Yeah, because the maximum size of the pin available I have put there, and even though I don't get there at bicortical purchase.
So fine. So this is key learning. One key learning point here is that if you have a very, very bulky thigh, you need to factor in your size of the pins, the length of the pins, especially they are available up to 220 only, and they may remain short. And second thing to factor in is the fixator, which could have a problem of impingement in such a bulky thigh.
One thing I want to add is I tried on table acute docking, but I got vascular compromise there.
Okay.
So I distracted again.
Okay.
I tried it with the acute docking of the bones, but I got this much of the distance. This is after 2-3 centimeter of the compression. Okay. This is not the full gap. This is after 2-3 centimeter compression.
Where I get my question to Dr. Anupam Mahajan is, would you like to do a proximal or a distal corticotomy here?
So now that we know that it's a difficult situation. Now, if you see carefully the proximal end, there is hardly any space to do the corticotomy since there are 4 pins there, and
and the pins are short as well.
And pins are short as well, so they won't be holding very well. So we need that strong fixation of 4 pins since they are not bicortical. So I would now prefer a distal corticotomy rather than a proximal corticotomy.
So fine. So I think I will agree to that fully, that the proximal area, the pin purchase is not adequate. because of the issue with the size, length of the pins. So the distal area is reasonably good. So a distal corticotomy would be. So let's see what was done. A distal corticotomy. I think, Doctor, you have a telepathy with Dr. Tarandeep. So, and this is after 3 months, we have a reasonable situation here. So at 9 months, we have reasonable, but still there is an issue with union and regenerate consolidation. But then we had issue with the screw cutout during the docking because of the infection and the not a bicortical purchase. So eventually this was replaced with another half pin, and bone grafting was done at the docking site to accelerate the union. And at 13 months, still not united. So eventually nailing was done because the fixator time was getting too long. Am I right, Dr. Taran?
Yeah, you are right, sir.
And with the issues of fixator impingement, this was not a good situation, but eventually the fracture did unite. So these are the final pictures. So what are the key learning points here? That in a bulky thigh, you can still consider a distraction osteogenesis, but if you are not comfortable, you have alternatives to that, which includes debridement and antibiotic spacer plus antibiotic nail, or whatever is your choice of internal fixation. You can even consider a plate, but that all depends on the quality of the bone, and consider a mascule even. So Dr. Harpal, would you have considered a mascule here? Dr. Harpal, please unmute yourself. I think we are not
yes,
able
please.
To... Yeah.
Yes.
Would you have considered a mascule here in such a bulky person? In hindsight?
I'm not sure. I'm not a very, I used to do mascule, but for mascule, you know, doing a classical mascule, you will need a intramedullary reamer graft harvester RIA system, which we do not have.
It's very expensive.
In this kind of a fatty patient, it's not very easy to go in again and again and do things. I'm not sure. Maybe mascule technique would be good if he's affording, and I could take the graft from the other femur and put it here. But again, stabilization would have been required. I think I'm pretty happy the way it's been managed. I won't be able to add anything.
I mean, it's very nice the way it has been managed. I just wish to add a few things. We have quite a bit of experience with mascule. And in fact, we have managed gaps up till around 15 centimeters as well. So we don't use the reamer respiration irrigation system because that is pretty expensive. We use autogenous cancellous bone graft, and if required, if the gap is very big, we mix it with the synthetic bone sometimes.
So anybody else in the panel who has experience with the synthetic bone? Because my personal experience with synthetic bone has not been good. Is it just
mixed
or
with,
is it?
It is mixed with the autogenous graft, and we have covered up to about 15 centimeters also. Okay. So Dr. Sanjeev, Dr. Anupam, do you have any experience?
No experience with synthetic bone graft, sir.
Okay.
But definitely mascule can be tried, but I've tried in a few cases of tibia, not in the femur.
Okay. So point is well taken.
Can I have a word, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So to me, I would like to prefer, I could do a middle way. I could do a transport as well as a mascule. That would give me advantage, because if we have you can cover half by transport and half by mascule, because that would give an advantage. If you put in a mascule bone cement to begin with, you will form a membrane So your bone grafting would be lessened and your fixation time will decrease and half of it could be transported. That could be another option.
Agreed, sir. Agreed.
Because that definitely holding Ilizarov on a femur for a long time is always not that a happy situation.
It's difficult for the patient. So let's move to the next case. So this is by Dr. Sanjeev. This was a 25 years old male, fracture of both bones leg, open grade 3C, and he was hit by a mortar from cross-border firing. And this is how the X-ray looked like, a bad X-ray. And apart from that, he had an absent posterior tibial artery with a wound about 7 centimeters, something like this, with exposed bone and the tendons. So a CT angio was done, which did show obstructed posterior tibial artery. So question to the panelist, I wish to ask Dr. Anupam Mahajan, what would you do here?
As I could see,
I would.
Can I just go back?
Yeah.
The problems that I can see here, one, it is a blast injury. So the soft tissue injury would be quite high because the velocity of the injury sustained is very much. And that can be also seen through the combination in the fracture side. Now there is a gap also there. So, and the soft tissue condition is not good. And also we have one vessel which is not working, which is the posterior tibial. So in this thing, and now the fibula is also fractured just about 10, maybe 5 centimeters or 7 centimeters from the ankle joint. Yeah. So one issue is the ankle stability, the gap there, the soft tissue conditions. So I would keep all these into considerations. So for me, I would do a thorough debrima, clean up that area. Any of these bone fragments which are there without some blood supply, which are devitalized, they might need to be removed. And then we need to, one, to do the soft tissue reconstruction, check the vascularity, assess the vascularity, and then do the bone reconstruction with the Ilizarov. I would also go across the ankle, fix the calcaneum, and maybe the foot to prevent any deformity.
Dr. Anupam, in the first stage, would you like to go in with the Ilizarov first or with the aortic fixator?
Sir, because the wound is more medially, yeah. So if we can do either primary fixator Ilizarov also you can do by just going putting 2 rods on the side, covering the defect, and then converting into 4 rods, and then go across and do the distraction later on.
So would you face some difficulties in dressing the part and the access to the part with the Ilizarov?
The reason why I want to be doing the fixator, the conventional tubular fixator, is because many people sometimes do not they put their pins, because if we do put a fixator and we need to do a lengthening, then we need to do a proximal corticotomy. And when we span the fixator, we sometimes go near the proximal corticotomy site with the potential chances of infection there. So even if we have to do a tubular fixator, we should always keep in mind that we should not put our pin, the proximal most pin, near the future corticotomy site.
Okay. So your point is very well taken. So future surgery has to be factored in while doing your primary surgery. So, okay. So what was done was a stabilization using an aortubular fixator after debrima, and this was the gap left. And the posterior tibial artery was ligated. 6 centimeters shortening was there after debrima. And what next? So what next? Dr. Taran, would you like to?
Yeah, the next point is to reconstruct the bone. Actually, you will assess the viability of the limb,
No, viability is good because anterior tibial is present.
Now the second thing to be addressed is the bone reconstruction.
Okay.
And in this case, and second is the reconstruction of the soft tissue.
So would you like to consider, I think the soft tissues were lacking. There were some issues with the soft tissues.
Yeah.
Dr. Sanjeev, am I right? There was some problem with the soft tissue coverage.
So there was a big hole both on the medial and the lateral side.
Okay.
And the plastic surgeon said that he needs flap on one side and maybe a free flap on the other side.
Okay. So that was the situation. So would you differ after considering this, Dr. Taran?
No, it's a reconstruction of the soft tissue plus reconstruction of the bone.
You would like to go in with the flap plus.
If plastic surgeon is available with you, and
okay,
then you can go for the soft tissue reconstruction. And if plastic surgeon is not available, then you have to compress or you have to bone transport. There are two things. One, you can dock the fragments. If there is no compromise with the vascularity, then it will show lessen that soft tissue defect. If you have any issues with the vascularity, then you can do a bone transport. It will automatically compress that area while transporting, and it will, I think, solve the issue of the soft tissue defect.
Dr. Bhola, would you like to differ, or would you like to go with the same?
Sir, I would.
I think once we do corticotomy proximally and start lengthening, the whole limb might get much more vascularized. One thing.
All right.
Secondly,
that the corticotomy will increase the vascularity, but it's a viable limb otherwise.
Yeah. Secondly, once that is increased and we start doing shortening at the fracture site or injury site, we'll have much better state of affairs of the soft tissues. We can start shortening over there. And might be we don't need later on any plastic surgery, surgical intervention even.
Now, my question to Dr. Siddharth is that how much acute docking you would be doing, you will be able to do comfortably?
So, sir, a good approximation is perhaps anything less than 3 or 4 centimeters. But in real practice,
you know, I would just interrupt you here,
sir.
Especially in the presence of a single vessel.
Yes.
How much safely you could do, and what do you do exactly?
Yeah. Sir, so that is what I was coming to. In practical situations, I mean, the literature says 3 or 4 centimeters. Yeah. Always better to put your hand on the pulse, do a slow and gradual docking on table. As soon as the pulse disappears, stop and go back. And if you had a handheld Doppler, which the vascular surgeons have, that's the best to assess how much you can safely dock and drop.
So, Dr. Siddharth, you have access to vascular surgery also. So, have you had any instance of a late thrombus formation due to kinking?
No, sir. Fortunately not. But I am aware that this
is a real
happen.
Possibility.
It is a real possibility,
so,
yes.
So, exactly this is the message which I wish to put across is that a late vascular thrombus is also a possibility. So acute docking should be taken with a little bit of caution, and if it is done, then the limb has to be monitored continuously for evidence, and this late thrombus formation could occur after about 3 weeks or so. So what was done was acute docking at the fracture site with a proximal corticotomy. And Dr. Sanjeev, how did you ensure the vascularity? Can you share some for evidence? And
sir, I have used a handheld Doppler.
So you used a handheld Doppler. Did you monitor the vascularity post-op also?
Yes, post-op he was monitored, and it was loose bandaging was done.
How did you ensure the vascularity? Can you share some?
Sir,
okay.
I did not put any bandages around it, just left it loose. I have used a handheld Doppler.
So you used a handheld Doppler. Did you monitor? Okay. So this question is already answered. So about 3 to 4 centimeters can be safely docked, but then you have to monitor the pulse distally. And perhaps in femur, you can dock a little more because you have more leverage in femur. So after 10 months, the thing went in for a good union with regenerate and good consolidation of the regenerate and union at the fracture site. So did you bone graft it, Dr. Sanjeev?
It was not required, sir, because
Bone grafting was not done.
it united
because
on
of the acute docking.
Yes. I had already compressed it, and I was just focusing more on the distraction because there was 6 centimeters gap.
So now it's all united and he has gone back to his profession. So the lessons learned here are that in case of a soft tissue issue, you can actually shorten the limb by acute docking and lengthen it so that you may not require a flap cover. Dr. Sanjeev, you wish to add anything more?
No, the message I want to give is, in a place where there is no plastic surgeon available, or the quantum of plastic surgery required is more than we may be able to get away with Elizarov at times. This could be one option. And use of handheld Doppler is a good option in such cases.
And just to complete the thing, again, I would like to reiterate that there is a possibility of a late thrombus formation. So if you are doing acute docking, especially in the presence of a single vessel, you need to monitor the patient continuously at least for 3 weeks. So this is a case by Dr. Siddharth. This is a 60 years old man with a road traffic accident with all sorts of comorbidities on earth, including chronic gouty arthritis, diabetes, hypertension, kidney disease. The ankle was stiff but in plantigrade, and 10 degrees of flexion contracture at the knee, and most of the joints on the foot were stiff. So this question goes to Dr. Sanjeev. What are the options available? Please see that this is a fracture here and a fracture near to the ankle in the fibula. So Dr. Sanjeev, what would you wish to do here?
Dr. PN sir, I think he's just left the meeting. I think it got disconnected.
All right. So let me ask this question to Dr. Bhola.
Yes, sir.
So Dr. Bhola, what do you think would be your choice?
Sir, I would like to do intramedullary nailing in this case. And
please remember, he has a lot of comorbidities, including gouty arthritis, diabetes, hypertension, and chronic kidney disease.
And otherwise, even a cast will be doing well if we...
So what would be your choice?
My choice will be, first still will be putting 2 ender nails, etc. so that you minimally go into it, stabilize it, and put some cast, let him make walk as early as possible. That's okay.
Okay. So Dr. Altaf, would you consider the same or would you differ?
If we consider, sir, many these comorbidities, even a conservative approach will not be bad even. And then keeping in view that we might at the same time like to mobilize the patient and cannot keep him in the cast for too long, an intramedullary nail would be a preferable one.
Okay. So, so there is an opinion for cast and intramedullary nail. Dr. Harpal, what would be your choice?
I would, comorbid conditions, if every blood workup, everything is normal or optimized, I would go for plain intramedullary nail in this patient.
Okay. So can I also add something? I think I would go with what the distal vascularity of the limb is. And if the distal pulses are palpable, then the choice would be intramedullary nail. But if there is a compromise of the distal vascularity, then I would consider a non-operative, like a POP cast.
Dr. PN, if you'd go for non-operative, how would you monitor the vascularity of the patient within the
So
cast?
this is already compromised because of the diabetes. See, this is because of the diabetes.
And if he develops an ulcer within a cast, then?
Yeah, it is difficult situation, but you know, this is how I so this was done elsewhere. The operating surgeon did. Dr. Anupam, do you think this is okay, or what is the problem here?
Sir, first of all, I would have suggested that since the fibula is intact,
We are little bit loud.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can see the previous X-ray also, the injury X-ray, the fibula is intact.
No, fibula is gone. Actually, there is a fracture there at the lower end. Yes, but it is minimally displaced.
Okay. So I would have preferred a non-operative refinish
No,
possible or
no.
But in this,
are you happy with this fixation?
No, because this is short segment, too short a fixation for.
So this is I agree. This is a totally unstable fixation, and this is not a desired way you fix it. And the surgeon has done an open reduction.
Open reduction. So because you can see the staples all going across. Yes. So the surgeon
once
has
the
done
open reduction has been done, that means the vascularity is further compromised. Would you have considered a MIPO here if a plate was to be chosen? Minimally invasive plate osteoplasty.
Yeah, that would have been a better option if we had to choose a plate.
Yes.
And
but anyway, the surgeon chose this. So in case the plate is chosen, otherwise if you want to choose an internal fixation, nail would be an ideal choice. But if somebody wants to choose a plate, then it should be minimally invasive percutaneous plate osteosynthesis. So what do you want to do now? Dr. Bhola?
Yes, sir.
What do you want to do now with the unstable fixation? Would you wait and watch? Would you do a revision plating or replace it with a nail or something else? Or would you like to protect it with a POP?
If he is having no problem, why not give him a cast and let him walk? Might be this unites and we are over to the T20 and he doesn't need anything.
Okay, I think the surgeon must have heard you. So I think a plaster was given there. But 6 months later, this is what happened. The area got infected. And now what?
Now again, you have to go in, you have to remove everything, implant, dead bone.
Yeah.
And might opt for again nailing, first a nail with bone cement and antibiotics. And once that is over, after some time, you can convert into a definitive
So you want to go with something like a Masculay technique?
My choice will be more for some sort of Elizarov so that we can.
So you want to debride and do a bone transport?
Yeah.
Okay, agreed. So Dr. Taran?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, would you differ or would you consider the same?
So I would consider same.
Okay, so now we have the consensus with the bone transport. So let's see what was done. Everything was removed. The patient did require a soleus flap. And the transport was done using a LRS or a rail fixator. So, Dr. Siddharth, how much was the gap?
I believe it was around 8 centimeters.
8 centimeters.
Yes.
So, 2 months later, we had an issue with the distal pins. And 2 pins completely backed out. So what next, Dr.
Can I just comment on the thing here, because this is to be taken care of, because since this patient was a patient with TRF, kidney disease. So the bone looks very osteoporotic. If you see the bone cortices,
Yeah,
they're
this
very
is
thin.
osteoporotic in
This,
the cancellous area, but reasonable in the cortical area.
yeah, so this could have so that is why these pins could be backing out from the cancellous area very easily. So
Yeah.
I would have anticipated this a little, Mitch, and maybe HA coated panes or something like that would have been much better option. Or
No,
if
but
it
now
was
this has already been done. So what would you consider now?
One can have the hold of the distal fragment with some kind of circular
so which pins are
fixator,
backing out now?
and
Distal
we
pins.
use
Distal pins.
wires.
I would, since the ankle is already fused.
Ankle is already fused. Yes.
So we can go easily across the ankle and fix that also to get an extended fixation.
So what would you use, Dr. Anupam?
We can just, since if the railroad is stronger, I can use the same pin, or we can go with a hybrid technique and try to fix the ankle with that. Get a more purchase, basically.
Okay. So Dr. Siddharth, can you just brief us what was done?
Yes, sir. So I completely agree with Dr. Anupam. So the patient to begin with refused an Elizrov. He was very scared of it and he would only agree for a rail. Hydroxyapatite coated pins, the cost was an issue. But sir, if I had to do the same case again, I would convince him anyways for an Elizrov. So in this case, because the proximal pins had a very good hold, the regenerate was there. I didn't want to mess with it. So I converted this into a hybrid construct. I spanned the ankle and took the foot and just added that onto the rail.
So this went in for union at 13 months. So I think one of the key message here is that you can even combine with a rail fixator with a Elizrov, and you can get the desired results. But if the pins they get loose, then definitely Elizrov, you have a better choice regarding the fixation vis-a-vis rail fixator, where you are only 3 fixed areas where you can put the pins. With the Elizrov, it is very versatile.
It's versatile.
So 6 months later, patient came again with this issue. So Dr. Altaf, would you like to take this?
Actually, did we have a solid union to begin with?
No, but now 6 months down the line, this is what has happened.
Did we have any issue? I would like to know what is the situation. If the markers are okay, then we can go back to our own plan, sir. We could again go for an intramedullary nail.
Intramedullary nail?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if the markers are fine, now there is no gap. And if at all there is any issue at the this non-union side, that can be fashioned again, and maybe you can add a graft.
All right. So, sir, Dr. Altaf, sir, he had no stigmata of infection. The markers had all come down. The flap had healed pretty well. And clinically and radiologically, it looked united to me, though I must concede, because of the flapped status of the soft tissues, I did not do a bone grafting. So had the case not had so many problems, I would have considered an additional bone grafting. Yeah.
So keeping in view now that you don't have any issues right now, so what is the problem with having an intramedullary nail again?
So
rather
have
it this time.
Now I think we just need to hurry up. We need to wind up so that we can take questions. So 3 months in the cast, no sign of healing. What was done was distal nail. Since the ankle was stiff, my question to Dr. Siddharth is, why did you choose to include the subtalar joint? Would a nail from the top would have been better?
So yes, sir. Yes, that was definitely one of the options. But clinically, the subtalar joint was completely stiff. And because the fragment was short, the ankle was stiff. I thought this was one of the reasons he had a refracture. And I thought biomechanically, this would have been more stable.
Okay, agreed that in case the ankle and subtalar are stiff, then you can consider a nail from the calcaneum. But if there was some motion in the subtalar joint, perhaps you would have considered a nail from the top?
Definitely, sir, because any amount of motion at the subtalar joint is preferable.
Okay.
Sir, just
so can I add for union? And the lessons learned here are that do not forget the non-operative treatment. It can still work, but non-operative is any day better than a poorly planned surgery and executed surgery like we had in this patient. Please remember the mechanical, biological, and patient factors that predispose to poor bone healing in this patient. There were all the factors available. And once there is a problem of infected non-union, be prepared with all the possibilities and permutation and combinations. So I think we end the case discussion.
Just one point, sir, if I am allowed.
Yeah, sir.
So if we go back on these slides, we can find out that the reason of this fracture, there was a hole which was quite big, which was created due to some shank pin which got infected. Through that hole, the fracture took place. What I mean to say, we can convey this thing that a hole which is there after the removal of the shank pin is a potential danger if it is not protected for some time. And so, it can lead on to fractures.
Dr. Bhola, how would you have protected this? Can you?
Some sort of cast, one thing. Second thing.
Would you consider a PTB polythene molded brace?
A kind of brace only.
Oh, PTB polythene molded brace?
Yeah, one thing.
Okay.
Second thing.
So your point is well taken.
Second thing is, what happens, sometimes patient do not turn up and that hole becomes bigger. Once we remove that becomes much more. If at the initial stages, these shank pins, they can be removed, then we can have less number of these kind of fractures. Because I have also seen many these kind of fractures once the shank pin is removed from those holes.
All right. So I think I end the case discussions here.
So, Dr. PN, there are some questions from the
Yeah,
attendees.
I think I'll just stop sharing the screen first.
Yeah. So, Dr. Altaf, first question is to you. When you do metacarpal lengthening or metatarsal lengthening, what is the rate of distraction that you do in these patients?
You see, the distraction, again, we can go at the same level. But preferably, I use, in case of a metatarsal or metacarpal, I use 1/4 turn BD only.
1/4 daily?
1/4 turn morning, evening.
Morning.
I don't take that
so
6 hours.
It is 0.25 millimeter per day in 2 doses.
It's 0.25 only, sir. And then always this can be monitored, because what is the problem that these are small bones. You have to be very delicate with the corticotomy. You don't have to disrupt the soft tissues around. Then if you are comfortable, you see in first week, you see first couple of weeks, you see some region rate happening, then you can accelerate the rate. Otherwise, I go slow to begin with in these situations.
All right. Do we have any other question?
Yes. Then there's a question to Dr. Tarandeep.
Yeah.
Did you face any challenge when you nailed the femur with the regenerate in?
I faced challenges due to weight, not due to regenerate. So,
is there a chance that your guide wire or your reamer goes out of the bone through the regenerate if the regenerate is soft?
If regenerate is soft, yes, you can have. But under CM guidance, you can put the guide wire in.
So is there any other trick to navigate the regenerate while nailing a regenerate?
Yeah, you should be very cautious, because you can bend the regenerate and there you can put another deformity. So while putting your patient on spica, you have to be very cautious.
Dr. Harpal, I would wish to add, though I don't do much of adult trauma nowadays. I basically do pediatric orthopedics. But then when I used to do these cases earlier, in case there is, sometimes the regenerate, there is a problem with negotiating the guide wire. So in that case, once you position the patient, you need to use a solid reamer under continuous image guidance to create a track. And once you've created a track and you get the guide wire in, then the things are easy.
Yes, I think I want to add it because of the size of the thigh I have to start very proximally, and the size of the reamer is not to reach the distal area of the femur. So reamer is end somewhere crossing the isthmus, because I have to start.
What I'm saying is use a solid reamer,
Yeah,
non-flexible reamer.
and in the obese patient, you have to start very proximally. Even
Yeah,
the entry point is very much proximal because of the size of the skin
So,
to get
right.
the nail in.
So the other question is,
yeah, sir.
the other question is, a lot of people have asked, why not use a railroad fixator if the patient is bulky? So Dr. Tarandeep, I'll request you to answer this.
Yeah, railroad fixator is stable, but it's not as much stable as much as Ilizarov. Ilizarov is 3-dimensional, where railroad is a strut fixation.
Absolutely,
So,
and plus
I would
pin size should
add.
be, just a minute, the pin length has to be the same in bulky patient, right?
I wish to add something.
And
you know, the problem with the rail fixator is that if you see the clamps of the rail, they are quite big, right? About 3 finger breadths wide. So you have to get at least this much of your pin inside. So the effective length of the pin decreases.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Ilizarov, you just need to hook it into a Rancho cube, which is about a finger breadth.
Yeah.
So you gain this much, about 5 centimeters of length of
second,
the
you have
pin
to
in
add
a
the
bulky
skin
patient.
clearance with
So
the rail fixator.
that is what I'm
that
coming to.
further
So
decrease your pin size.
May I add one
Skin
thing?
clearance is much better with the Ilizarov vis-a-vis.
May I add one point, sir? May I add one point, sir?
Yeah, definitely.
Hello, Dr. Harpal.
Yeah, Dr.
Yeah, you can add.
Yes. You see, this rail fixator is good for the patient's comfort, but the Ilizarov is definitely better for its versatility. You have fixed clamps, so if you want to move a pin here and there, depending on the anatomy of the femur, if you don't have available space, then you are constrained. Whereas in case of a ring, you can go on always building on the ring. You can add a pow post, you can have anything you can add, and you can have in any plane any additional fixation. And the third thing is that I've seen issues with the consolidation of the region rate in case of a rail, because it's too fixed. It doesn't allow any micromotion. While as Ilizarov is actually stable. Once you ask the patient to bear weight, I've seen that the consolidation happens earlier than in case of a rail.
I agree with all the points. Dr. Taran, just hold on. I agree with all the points, but this is just not to discourage anybody. But if you are not comfortable with the Ilizarov, definitely you can use a LRS. It does give you results. It's not that LRS is
basically
not
the
useful,
principles that are
but
more
yes,
more
it is
important.
much more comfortable to the patient, and it is easier to do than a Ilizarov if you are not trained for doing a Ilizarov, but you can certainly do with a LRS.
One comment I want to add is, in this case, if you want to try LRS, I have longer size, the longest pin available that is not going with the LRS because of the thick width of the thigh size. The girth of the thigh is so big that LRS could not be applied, and the largest available pin size is even smaller.
Agreed. That is what I was actually speaking earlier, that a lot of pin is eaten away by the clamp, which is much wider than the Rancho cube. Yes.
So if there are no more questions, I think we have got some fresh questions now.
So we could have some questions from the guests.
Yeah, that is what I'm taking up. So one question was,
anybody wants to ask a question, they can raise their hand.
Just a minute. So how to choose between railroad and Ilizarov? I think that has been answered. So we would take it as done. So for a tibial gap non-union, what would you prefer, a Ilizarov or a railroad fixator?
So, sir,
I'll take that question. It is your choice what you want to do. But Ilizarov is much more modular than a rail fixator, and in tibia, if you are comfortable, it is easier to apply. Now, question is whether you want to go in with the all wire construct or a all pin construct, or a hybrid construct with wires and pins. It is as per your comfort level. The primary aim here would be choose those fixation, transosseous fixation devices, wire or pin, which you're comfortable with, and you are so that the vascularity is not injured. But definitely it is more modular with Ilizarov than with LRS. But if you're not comfortable, you can consider LRS also. LRS has some constraints that the pins can be put only at fixed three areas, which the clamps allow, whereas the Ilizarov is modular. And second problem with LRS is that it is a uniplanar fixator, with the Ilizarov is a circular and modular.
So Dr. PN, let me put it into right perspective for people so that they can choose, they can make a decision. So just give me either of one. Don't try to explain which provides better stability, as LRS or Ilizarov.
Ilizarov is definitely better.
Ilizarov is better.
Yes.
In your opinion, if we have to follow the exact method of LRS application, with all the things that are to be done, with all pins absolutely parallel and everything.
Yeah.
Do you think it is simpler to apply? People mistake it with the application of an AO fixator.
It is
Do you
simpler
think
to
that
apply.
is
Yes.
technically less demanding? I think it is technically more demanding than an Ilizarov fixator.
Yes.
Yeah, it
Because
is
one
actually,
wrong
if you
pin-
get one pin wrong, then you had it.
Yeah, I had it. So
Yeah.
the message should be LRS is not technically that simple, provides less stability, more chances of pin loosening in an osteoporotic bone. So if you really want to go for fixators, learn Ilizarov, have good knowledge of application and experience, and then maybe in simpler cases, you could go back to LRS, not the other way around, that you start with LRS and once you learn, you can come to Ilizarov. That's what I think is the right way to do it.
Agreed.
Now, Dr. Taran, what do you feel about my statement?
Yeah, it's good. But one thing I want to add, LRS is also not good for the small fragments.
Absolutely. Okay, there are few more questions. Dr. Bhola, in a tibia, if there is a bone gap, will you prefer a corticotomy proximally or distally, and why?
I think we have some connection issues.
Dr. Siddharth, can you answer that question?
So, sir, that would depend upon where the defect is. If the defect was in the middle of the diaphysis, I would go with a proximal tibial corticotomy, because then I would be away from the ankle joint, you know. But if there was a shortish metaphyseal fragment, like Dr. Altaf's case.
All things equal, which will you prefer, proximal or a distal, and why?
Sir, I would go with a proximal tibial corticotomy, because then it would allow me to use a standard 3 ring construct. So where you had one ring proximal, one ring distal, and one in the middle, and then you could do all sorts of things. I would not have to worry about the ankle procurvatum problems like we had in Dr. Altaf's case.
So
I wish to add.
Can I just add?
So the proximal tibia is more vascular, so your regenerate is much better. Number one, you have less issues with the ankle equinus if you go in with a proximal tibial osteotomy.
The other thing is rate of the distraction.
So Dr. Taran, please go ahead.
Rate of distraction in proximal tibia, you have 1 mm per day, and distal tibia, you have to lessen the rate of distraction initially. So number of days will be less in case of proximal tibia.
Okay. Anupam, you want to add something?
Yeah, so the question was whether how to decide the site of corticotomy, proximal or distal, right? So first and foremost,
not site of corticotomy. If all things equal, which one will you prefer, proximal or distal?
Proximal, because of the better soft tissue coverage. Then
that's already been answered. That's been answered.
And obviously it gets less defective.
Anyone having experience or any protocol, whether to get a DEXA done before going for bone transport or corticotomies or other things, is there any link? Is there any importance of DEXA scan? Siddharth?
Sir, so I do, there is an ongoing project where we are doing DEXA to monitor the regen rate. But I think in these cases, your options are very limited, and DEXA or no DEXA, you would have to choose one corticotomy or the other. And it's not like the proximal or distal would have very different DEXA values. So that would not alter my management.
Okay.
Only thing, sir, where we have been using this, taking care, this alendronate, that's in case of release cross union. Because that's a recommended protocol there, because the basic pseudoarthrotic limbs or bones are very porotic. So as per Paley's protocol, you give first alendronates as per a particular dosage 2 weeks before surgery. Otherwise, in routine cases, sir, I don't think we have a much to do with having a previous pre-op DEXA scan.
Yeah, I would wish to add that there is no cutoff value which is defined anywhere in the literature, which says that beyond this or lesser than this DEXA, you can't go in for a pin fixation, or there is no cutoff value to the best of my knowledge. Anybody has a...
No, sir. Actually, there is some literature as to which fixations are likely to have poor region rates if the original DEXA. Yeah, but you are absolutely right. There is no literature on pin pull-out strength.
Yes.
So if there are no more, there's again one more question from the, any role of teriparatide in the region rate, improvement or region rate?
I think Stark will answer it.
So sir, yes, we have been looking at this in animal models, and actually we have shown in our preliminary work that you can double the rate of distraction osteogenesis, including, and you can cut down on the consolidation phase. But mind you, this is not a standard clinical indication. It does not mean that for any case that has poor region rate, you will go in for teriparatide. There is a standard way to approach a poor region rate. You find out why that is. You decrease the rate of distraction, see if there are biomechanical or other biological factors, do the accordion maneuver, and if nothing works, then in my opinion, teriparatide can be used, but again, as a form of a clinical research tool. This is not a standard indication, unless, of course, if your patient was osteoporotic.
So there are a lot of pharma companies which are promoting teriparatide as a messiah for non-unions and poor region rate. Do you think that has any place in treatment of these kind of clinical situations?
So only in the form of a clinical trial, sir. Unless we have the approved indication of teriparatide, I would strongly urge all my colleagues not to use this right, left, and center, because it does have its own set of problems.
So Dr. Sajil wants to know, has PTH got any role?
What?
In treatment of non-unions and improvement of region rate?
Parathormone?
Yeah.
No, to the best of my knowledge, it has no role in promoting union.
So, Dr. PN, you have to take a call. There are no more questions. If you, I'll request you to close the session.
I think we closed this session, and it was a wonderful discussion. I thank all the panelists, and I thank the sponsors.
Thank you.
So, over to you, Dr. Harpal.
So, next week we meet again, and the next session is going to be Alizarov in pediatrics. So, we'll have a panel. Some of us would be here from this panel, and the other pediatric surgeons will be involved from the North Zone and all over India for our session next time. And beyond that, we have a session planned on deformity correction and management of infected non-unions. And I'm in touch with Professor Ramesh Sen to organize further sessions on trauma, which will be useful to everyone. And looking at, I've been given a feedback that this time is clashing with a lot of other meetings. So after discussion with the executive committee, our president and the panelists, we'll see if the time can be adjusted. I have to talk to our sponsors. I'll now hand over the proceedings to Jackson Pal Pharmaceuticals, who have very graciously sponsored our session for today.
So thank you very much. Thanks so much for, first of all, giving us this opportunity to associate with NZOA. And on behalf of Jackson Pal, the makers of injection nandrolone deconate as Metadec injection with 30 years of legacy of trust and care, and our newly launched cartilage-specific collagen, COLA2, collagen peptide 2. So I'm Dr. Deepika here, and along with me are my teammates, Dr. Vipin and Mr. Amit Saxena. We all thank all the experts for sharing such immense knowledge with us today. We are truly appreciative of the presence of all the attendees, without whose support this engaging webinar that had so many questions come up. So thank you so very much to all the experts. We're really thankful, and we look forward to more and more webinars on this series through the association with the North Zone Orthopedics Association. So we would love to continue further in knowledge sharing. Thank you very much. And till the next webinar, hopefully next Saturday, when we see all the attendees and even more. So thanks a lot to everybody.